Here we are in Lent, and here we are opening up this experience of reimagining our values, our lives in light of the words of Jesus. And I was inspired this week while watching this new series on Netflix called With Love, Megan. It's the new aspirational food, flowers hosting show by Meghan Markle, or now Megan Sussex. I surprisingly came across what I'm going to use as my theme for Lent on that show. I'm not kidding you. As November passed and the beginnings of planning for Lent started way back then, I decided that I wanted a little less of a Lenty Lent. Less dour, less dark, less meager, more Easter-ish, or pre-Easter, priester, if you want to think about it. Because I think the world is tough enough right now, wouldn't you agree? It's time for us to think and re-examine, but I want us to be gentle with ourselves. And so during one episode, when she had on the creator of the skincare line that I love, Vicky Tsai, whoever uses Tatcha cleansers and stuff? No, okay, just me. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. So there, and also Meghan Markle puts flowers on everything, so now I'm aspiring to put little tiny flowers on everything. You're welcome. So, Vicky, this person who's created this beautiful, holistic, Korean, natural skincare line, does these rituals with it. So she looks at the day as you begin the day, wash your face, put on makeup, you end the day, wash your face, put on makeup. These are times for you to be intentional. Like, what is my intention for the day, right? You're in the bathroom and you think, I'm just got to get this done. And she says, no, stop. At the end of the day, when you're washing your face and taking everything off, what do you also need to wash away, right? What do you also need to leave behind from the day that's on you? And so she looks at things as more than just routines, right? And so in the episode, she says this, which I think is profound and will sort of guide me on our journey for Lent. And she says this: the only difference between ritual and routine is intention. The only difference between ritual and routine is intention. And sometimes church and spiritual life becomes a routine for us, and that's not a bad thing. But I think during Lent we want to reimagine and think again about what things we're going to ritualize, what things serve us, what things maybe don't serve us. And so to me that's a great mindset for this next 40 days-ish, to be in priester, Lentish, whatever you want to call it. And so what parts of our personal routines, spiritual, daily, are no longer serving us? What parts of our routines are important enough to ritualize with intention? We all know that we can get in a rut. I think many of us try to do and understand and live into everything, especially if you're parents or grandparents, especially if you're working and doing all the things. It's easy in this world, the world of information, and now kind of beyond the information age, we have the tech age, right? It's easy to become exhausted and overwhelmed. Who's with me? Do you ever feel exhausted and overwhelmed? There's just so much coming at us, right? And so I think it's a good time in Lent for us to rethink our values, rethink the things that are coming at us, sort of checking out what's happening in our lives. And in order to do that, we have to get honest about those things, right? Reimagining something means we have to first engage them and encounter them in our lives. Again, we need to think about values. And so I've been thinking about what it means for us to reimagine and rethink our values. And some might say, and I've heard this quote going around particularly recently, that the downfall of our modern world, there's wonderful things about our modern world, right? But one of the things that's detrimental about our modern world is that we've sort of reversed our values in the last 40 or 50 years or so. We're supposed to love people and use things, but what has sort of happened? We flipped that a bit sometimes. And now we sometimes love things too much, and sometimes we see people being used. Joshua Fields Millborn, author of several best-selling books on how to live a minimalist lifestyle, and he has a podcast called what? The Minimalist, yes. He says this, and asks this question that I think is helpful for us today. How much is enough? Less than enough feels depriving. More than enough feels indulgent. Enough is that sweet spot in the middle, that place where intentionality intersects with contentment, where lust for more doesn't get in the way of creating something meaningful and beautiful. Sure, you could pursue more at all costs, but could is not a reason to do anything. You could do it, but could is not a reason to do anything. Enough is enough when you decide it's enough. What is enough for one person, again, may be different than another person. So I'm not giving you a blueprint. I'm not saying here are the 5 things you need to do. People love a 5-point sermon. It's very simple, but that's not really helpful because I can't help but notice that people I know that are watching online and people that are here, you're all so different and you live such different lives. And so this is just me inviting you to reimagine your own life, to make choices about your time, talents, and treasures for yourselves. So this Lent, we will endeavor to challenge ourselves again to live with intention, right? Take routine, give it some intention, and ritualize it for ourselves. Be thoughtful about how we spend our money, our resources, our time, all the beautiful gifts we have in the world. Thoughtful about how much external stuff that we consume, and thoughtful in how we will respond to the challenges of our day. This world, again, is overwhelming with grief and division, misinformation, and ways to divert ourselves from the reality of being fully present in the world. And I think one of the things, like I said at the beginning of all of this, that is really the trap of the modern world is that we can get ourselves entertained too much, right? Away from the pain of the world because it's overwhelming. But we also can get too much into the pain of the world, and we can become sort of, I don't know, like a deer caught in a headlight. It's just too much, right? Too much. And so what is it, that sweet spot in the middle, where we are understanding and empathetic and caring for the world, but also caring for ourselves at the same time? What does that look like? Now, some things we need to do and we cannot opt out of. So in Lent, you can't say, I'm taking off work for 40 days. Unless you have that kind of job, and then call me, because that sounds amazing, right? I don't even have that kind of job, and I'm supposed to lead Lent, right? Could you imagine if I was like, I'm not doing anything this Lent, y'all, just kicking back, here we are, giving up work for Lent. You have to eat, you have to go to work again, you have to take care of your family, you have to do the laundry, yeah, I know, you have to get gas for the car, clean your bathroom, shop for groceries, wash off all the salt accumulation on our cars. Yeah, that's a new rhythm, right? A new routine I have now that I live here. And not everything needs to be reevaluated. That would be overwhelming. But maybe it's good to remind ourselves how this life we are living, even with its struggles and pain, is something to be beautifully treasured with intention. Maybe it's a time to eat more mindfully. Maybe it's time to go to work with a different attitude. Maybe it's time to get gas for our spouses or kids or partners just to say we love them, because no one loves that task, let's be honest. Maybe rethink the toxic stuff we use to clean our bathrooms, right? Just little things that we look around in our lives and think, how can we, with intention, make this better? Maybe rethink where we buy our groceries or what stores or places we support. Again, this isn't me telling you to do certain things or not certain things. This is me saying that the world is hard enough. And so let us rethink where our energy goes, where our time goes, what our attitudes are like when we get there. Right? Let me say that again. The world is hard enough. And so it's time for us, we're given permission to rethink where our energy goes, because we don't have unlimited energy. Where does our energy go? Where does our time go? What are our attitudes like when we get there? In this passage that will be our focus, Jesus contrasts treasures on earth with treasures in heaven. Jesus is reminding his original audience that our possessions and acquisitions are always corruptible, vulnerable, and temporary, right? There's the famous saying, you can't take it with you, right? And that was during a time when most people didn't own an overflowing closet full of clothes, right? That was during a time in the ancient world when people didn't have the accumulation of stuff that we have. Yet even in the ancient world, like at a time when we modern folks might look back 2,000 years ago and go, that's a really quaint, sweet time, Jesus' message was no different. It seems being challenged to love people and only use stuff is ancient and universal and welcoming. Gathering treasure in heaven refers to conducting oneself in anticipation of being in God's presence one day. What it means to think of treasure in heaven, it's taking each moment realizing that there's an eternity with this moment. And I can either spend money into that beautiful eternity or into things that are corruptible, right? And Jesus didn't invent this saying. For many Jewish texts speak about living in such a way that doesn't store up sort of the incorruptible treasures that are tied with later reward. The true value of our monetary wealth, therefore, lies not in its power to accumulate simple possessions in pursuit of comfort or power or safety. Wealth enables generosity, and a generous heart has its sight set on God. And this work will work with us in two ways for Lent, how our hearts work. First, this reminds us that our hearts spilling out into the world through what we value, because our use of wealth displays where our hearts reside, the use to which we put money to identify what our innermost selves care about more deeply will impact other people. We can even now begin to remind ourselves of where we put our time and talent and treasure towards what can be things that we can't take with us, but things that will last for a lifetime and generations. Because as we know, generosity, giving, lasts a lifetime, a legacy beyond where we are right now into the world. And so what we do in our hearts, where our treasures and where our time and where our talents go, right? We can't do everything. That impacts the world. But secondly, it impacts us. Our hearts can be made to follow where our treasure goes. That's what it's saying. We can actually change our hearts in a world that feels sort of callous and unfeeling, and in a world where oddly people are lifting up empathy as a bad thing, and empathy simply means, I understand. That's all it means. I hear your story and I understand. Right? Our hearts can be made to follow somewhere new. You can renew your heart this Lent. When you invest in certain charitable causes and people, your hearts expand to care for them. For me, this last few weeks, I researched and found that there is local Illinois Black Farmers Collective. Did you know that? There's an Illinois Black Farmers Collective. And so what does it look like for me to support? So I supported them online. I gave money. And now I'm like intrigued and fascinated. And if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't looked at that, if I hadn't thought about that, if I hadn't put my money towards it, I wouldn't even know it exists. It's opened and expanded my heart. Again, giving a gift, putting money towards the use and promote of God's vision of righteousness, giving your time and your talent for someone different than you, it may help our hearts receive a taste of what God desires for the world. Because our hearts always need to remain teachable and movable in a hurting world that's overwhelming. To have empathy, to give compassion to others, is the highest calling we can attain to. But it's in these small acts of intentional goodness that we will reveal our hearts and also change our hearts. A few years ago, Pastor Nadia Bowles-Weber, who I know, wrote a new kind of beatitude. She's an author and a pastor. She reimagined the Beatitudes. And so the thought is, who do we need to bless that we often overlook? Who should we treasure more that might change our own hearts? And here's the list of some of her blessedness. And I'm going to end with this, and I want you to imagine if there are ones that you would add to this. This is what she says. Blessed are they who doubt, those who aren't sure, those who still can be surprised by awe. Blessed are those who have nothing to offer, for they're exhausted and they've done too much. Blessed are they who have buried their loved ones, for whom tears could fill an ocean. That feels real here, doesn't it? Blessed are they that have loved enough to know what loss feels like. Blessed are they who can't fall apart because they have to keep it together for everyone else. Blessed are those who still aren't over it yet, whatever it is, right? Blessed are those no one else notices. The kids who sit alone in middle school lunches, the laundry guys at the hospital, the office work cleaners, and the night shift street sweepers. Maybe add the people that take away our, I was gonna like talk about the snow, but what is that called? Snow removal. But like they have the, anyway. I hear them at 4 a.m. on our street. We bless them, right? We bless them. They're doing good work. They're doing good work. Blessed are those without documentation who live in a world of in-betweens and difficulty. Blessed are those who are burnt out, who do caring in the world that often feels too much, like overworked teachers, pro bono caseworkers. Blessed are those kids who step between the bullies and the weak. Blessed are those. Blessed is everyone who has ever forgiven me. That's what she says. Blessed is everyone who's ever forgiven me when I didn't deserve it. Blessed are the merciful, for they totally get it. You, beloveds, are of heaven. You, beloveds, are loved by God. You, beloveds, are the ones that you've been waiting for. May you feel blessed this Lent as you encounter Jesus in new ways and know that you are blessed too. Amen.